All right, let's dive right in. Today we're talking about one of the oldest industries on the planet, insurance. But, this isn't some dusty history lesson. It's actually a story about a radical, high-tech reinvention. We're going to look at how skilled professionals are being transformed into something we're calling the exponential underwriter. It's a pretty big deal, so let's get into it.
So let's kick things off with a single number, 80%. Now, get this, that's how much time many incredibly skilled, highly paid insurance underwriters spend on paperwork. Yeah, not on analyzing complex risks, not on making million-dollar decisions, but just wrestling with manual administrative tasks. It's kind of shocking when you think about it.
And that right there leads us to the core question we're tackling today. I mean, in an age of AI and instant everything, how is it possible that some of the sharpest minds in finance are still buried in paperwork? It just doesn't make sense. Well, the answer? It points to a huge problem, but also an even bigger opportunity.
So what's the answer? Well, it all comes down to a problem that plagues so many established companies. Old, clunky, outdated technology. We're calling it the paperwork prison because that's exactly what it is. It's a system where the very tools that are supposed to help you actually end up trapping you, slowing down progress, and just stifling any real innovation. And if you look inside this prison, the reality is, well, it's pretty grim. We're talking about critical information scattered across like 6 or more different systems that don't talk to each other. Key workflows? A lot of them are still running on paper or endless Excel spreadsheets. And get this, a whopping 70% of the IT budget isn't for new, cool stuff. It's just to keep the old, creaky system from falling apart. This isn't just inefficient, it's a massive anchor dragging the whole business down.
And this whole internal mess isn't happening in a bubble, not at all. It's actually reaching a boiling point because there's a ton of pressure from the outside. You've got these new, nimble competitors jumping into the market, and the key thing is, they don't have any of this old baggage. For the big, established insurance companies, this is a massive wake-up call.
And you can really see the stakes when you look at the cold, hard cash. We're talking about the profitability gap. The old guard, the incumbents, they're spending anywhere from 20 to 30 cents of every single dollar just on operating costs. But these new digital attackers, they're running at 12 to 15%, nearly half. When you're at that kind of disadvantage, change stops being a nice to have. It becomes a fight for your very survival.
Okay, so the situation looks dire. How do you actually escape this paperwork prison? Well, you can't just slap a new coat of paint on it. You have to build a completely new foundation from the ground up. So let's take a look at the blueprint for how you pull off a change this massive.
The secret weapon here is a concept called microservices. Now I know, that sounds super technical, but don't worry. The analogy makes it incredibly simple. Think about it like this. Your old system is like a giant solid block of concrete. If one tiny part breaks, the whole thing is a mess to fix. But with microservices, you're building with Legos instead. Each Lego is a small, independent part that does one job perfectly. So you can swap pieces out, add new ones, and fix things without breaking the whole structure. It's flexible, it's modern, it's just a much smarter way to build.
But wait a second. You can't just shut down a massive insurance company for a year while you rebuild everything, right? I mean, that's impossible. And that's where this really clever strategy comes into play. It's called the strangler fig pattern, named after a plant that grows around another tree. You basically build your new, shiny system around the old, clunky one. Then, one piece at a time, you start redirecting tasks to the new system. First quotes, then claims, and so on. Over time, the new system gets bigger and stronger, and the old one is just slowly and safely strangled until it's not needed anymore. It's brilliant. It's basically like performing open-heart surgery on a patient while they're running a marathon.
All right, so we've built the new foundation. The plumbing is all modern and shiny. Now we can finally get to the star of the show. This is the tool that actually gets put into the hands of the underwriter, the thing that completely changes their job forever. Let's talk about the next-gen Underwriting Workbench.
I love this description. A single pane of glass. It perfectly sums up the idea. This Underwriting Workbench, let's call it the UWW for short, is basically a unified dashboard. No more jumping between 6 different windows, trying to copy and paste information and losing your mind. Everything the underwriter needs to do their job is right there, in one single spot.
So, this UWW basically has 3 superpowers that make it a total game changer. First, it's got AI-powered ingestion. That's a fancy way of saying it can read all the messy stuff like emails, PDFs, random documents, and magically turn it into clean, useful data. Second, it has intelligent automation. It just gets rid of all the boring, repetitive tasks. And third, it's packed with predictive analytics, giving the underwriter actual data-driven insights to make way smarter decisions about risk.
Okay, that all sounds great, but let's connect the dots to the actual business value. Because this isn't just about cool new toys. The link is super clear. You automate the workflow, boom, you reduce the time it takes to get things done. You use predictive analytics, that directly improves your combined ratio, which is just the key measure of how profitable an insurer is. It's that simple. Every single feature here is designed to move a critical business number in the right direction.
And this is where it all comes together, bringing us back to the human at the center of all this. Because the point of all this tech isn't to replace the underwriter, not at all. It's to augment them, to give them superpowers, really, and transform their role into something way more strategic and way more valuable.
I mean, just look at this before and after. It's a night and day difference. Before, the underwriter was basically a data gatherer, a process follower, totally buried in transactional work. But after, they become a risk strategist, a decision maker. And remember that 80% of their time they spent on admin? Well, that completely flips. Now they get to spend 80% of their day on the stuff that actually matters, analysis and building relationships.
And this frees them up to evolve into these awesome new roles. First up, you have the deal maker. This is the underwriter who's now totally freed from the paperwork nightmare. They can focus on what people do best, building strong relationships with brokers and negotiating those really complex, high-stakes deals that a machine could never handle. Then you have the portfolio optimizer. This person takes a step back and uses all those powerful analytics to look at the big picture. They're managing the company's entire book of business, balancing risk across the whole portfolio, and making strategic moves to guide the company. You know, they're playing chess, not checkers. And last but not least, there's the risk detective. This is so cool. This underwriter gets to use the AI tools to go hunting in the data. They're looking for those super subtle patterns of fraud or identifying brand new risks that are just starting to emerge, things you would have had absolutely no way of seeing in the old disconnected world.
All right, so the story is great, the theory is powerful, but does this stuff actually work in the real world? Let's get to the bottom line. It's time to look at the proof, and the proof is always in the numbers. First off, just look at the impact on speed. This chart shows what we call cycle time, basically how long it takes to go from a quote request to a finished policy. In the old world, you were talking weeks, maybe days if you were lucky. With the new Workbench, it plummets down to hours or even minutes. That is an absolute game changer for your customers and your partners.
And check out this number, 95%. For the simple, straightforward policies, that's the straight-through processing rate some of these companies are hitting. What does that mean? It means 95 out of every 100 of those simple policies fly through the system from start to finish with zero, and I mean zero, human touch. It's completely automated.
And remember that 80% number we started with? The one about all the time wasted on admin? Well, here's the after picture. The roles are completely reversed. That tiny little slice, that's the admin work now. And that huge 80% chunk, that's the underwriter's time now freed up for the strategic work, the analysis, the stuff that actually makes a difference.
So in the end, it all comes down to the bottom line results. And they are impressive. Profitability goes up, efficiency goes through the roof. We're talking about underwriters being able to handle up to 40% more work. And maybe, just as important, the brokers and agents you work with are way happier. It's a win-win-win. So there you have it. That's the story of how one of the world's most traditional industries is completely reinventing itself. And the key takeaway is that this isn't about replacing people with machines. It's about augmenting people, freeing them up to be more creative, more strategic, more human. And that really leaves us with one final big question to chew on. What does the exponential human look like in your industry?